What you're about to watch is a recent video by Professor Walter Veith about apostasy in the SDA church. He preached this sermon at his recent camp meeting in Maine. So let's go ahead and listen to what Professor Walter Veith said about apostasy in the SDA church today.
And the glory of God of Israel was gone up from the cherub, whereupon he was, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the forehead of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that are done outside in the world. Does it say that? No. I'm glad you're awake. In the midst of thee. In the midst of thee. If there's no apostasy in this church, then please leave this church and find one that has apostasy. Otherwise, you're in the wrong church. Okay. And to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city and smite. Do not let your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly, old, young, both maids and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. This is terrible. And we're right there. This is going to happen. There's going to be a terrible shaking. But the one who does the shaking is who? God. God does the shaking, not me. I don't know who's Aaron and who's Korah. I don't know. God knows. Moses fell on his face. And he said, Let them live, Lord. Blot me from the book of life, but let them live. And that's how it is. And you know, where are we in the stream of time? I might be wrong. I'm not a guru. I might be wrong. But you know, when you went to Jerusalem, there was a first and there was a second siege, wasn't there? Cestius surrounded the city, and then miraculously he withdrew his troops. And there was a space of time to breathe and to make a decision. And then the final climax came. And Jerusalem was destroyed, and all that had heeded the voice of the Lord was saved. There weren't 3 chances, or 4, or 5. One time, withdraw. Second time. Sunday legislation. Cestius surrounded Jerusalem, and the Blair Bill was to be passed, and Sunday law was to come to this country, and Cestius, as a result of some very good arguments, removed his troops. And the second one is on the way. So the Lord, in his kindness, said, My people are not ready. I'm going to give them a test run. I'm going to give them a test run of freedom of conscience. My people are not ready. So he gave us a test run the last 3 years. And the divisions amongst us were very great. They were very great. But we're sitting together again, and we have a time to contemplate, and we have a time to think about it. I don't think there will come another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. That's not the pattern that I see in the Bible. Just my personal opinion. I think the next one's going to be the real thing. And when the real thing comes, well, then this takes place. this takes place. There will be no time for anything else. There will be no time to say, well, all of these guys are so bad, let's separate and start over. This is it. I believe this is it. Just my opinion. Don't quote me. I'm not a time setter, even though some think I am. We are the Lord's denominated people to proclaim the truths of heavenly origin. The most solemn sacred work ever given to mortals is the proclamation of the first, second, and third angels' messages to our world. In our large cities, there should be health institutes to care for the sick and to teach the grand principles of health reform. The world is going to see disease like you cannot believe. And we have been given an opportunity to choose. Do we trust the Bible? Do we trust the spirit of prophecy? Do we trust our health message? Because every support will be cut off. And people will be suffering. And we need these institutions to pick up the slack and draw many to righteousness. We've had an opportunity to see, is Caesar going to save me? Is Caesar going to help me? Or is Caesar going to destroy me? The church may appear about to fall, but it does not fall. It remains while the sinners in Zion will be sifted out. The church stands. This is just how I see it. We cannot now step off the foundation that God has established. We cannot now enter into any new organization, for this would mean apostasy from the truth. I'm instructed to say to Seventh-day Adventists that the world over, God has called us as a people to be a peculiar treasure unto himself. He has appointed that his church on earth shall stand perfectly united in the spirit and counsel of the Lord of hosts to the end of time. We're not perfectly united. But there are elements in our church at every single level that are perfectly united, at least on the major issues. I have found that wherever I went, whether I was banned in that place or whether I was not banned in that place, there was someone that was like-minded that could encourage you. And there was someone that you could encourage that was feeling that they wanted to sigh and cry for all the evil that is done in Israel. At times when a small group of men entrusted with the general management of the work have in the name of the General Conference sought to carry out unwise plans to restrict God's work, I have said that I could no longer regard the voice of the General Conference represented by these few men as the voice of God. But this is not saying that the decisions of the General Conference, composed of an assembly of duly appointed representatives, men from all parts of the field, should not be respected. God has ordained that the representatives of his church from all parts of the earth, when assembled in a General Conference, still have authority. And as long as that structure, this bottom-up structure, exists, where the delegates from all parts of the world will determine whether a doctrine should stand or whether a doctrine should go, then I can have confidence. And I'm rather glad that the bulk of those delegates will come from the more uncorrupted areas of the world, even though there is no such thing as a totally uncorrupted area of the world. We're all trying very hard to see if we can beat the other parties in corruption. It's getting worse and worse, no matter where you live. No matter where you live. But this is the status quo. So, if a conference leadership decides, I'm banned, I'm not allowed to speak in that conference. But my conference says, no, you're not banned. We like what you say. Then, according to the rules, as an ordained minister, I should be able to speak. Now, that puts the cat amongst the pigeon, and not everybody is happy. But that's what the rule says. So if I go, I'm not a rebel. I'm exercising my rights, and I'm doing what I think is for the people's benefit, because they need encouragement. And this is how I've been operating. God has invested His church with special authority and power, which no one can be justified in disregarding. We cannot now step off the foundation that God has established. We cannot now enter a new organization, for this would mean apostasy from the truth. So if the Lord loves His church, and the Lord allowed Caiaphas to rule, then I must love His church, and I must allow whoever I think might be Caiaphas to rule. But I mustn't forget that there is an Aaron, and I mustn't forget that there is a Joseph of Arimathea, and I mustn't forget that there is a Nicodemus, even if he comes to you at night and says, you know, I really agree with you, but I can't support you publicly. This is our church. It's a crucible. It's a painful crucible. Don't withdraw from the body. That class who have withdrawn from the body, well, cut loose. Cut loose. I was speaking to young people here in the audience yesterday, and they told me that they belonged to groups that had cut loose. I said, come back. They said to me in Germany, we can't come back, it stinks. I said, it stank in the ark. There was a heck of a lot of manure in the ark. They couldn't have said, well, I'm separating myself from the manure. You would have drowned. Okay, so the Germans said to me, those that had separated, said, we like what you say. Wouldn't you want to come and speak at our church? I said, no. Come and listen to where I speak within the church. Not the building, because I'm not speaking in the building in Germany, but I'm speaking outside the building. But it's a church because everybody belongs to the church that sits there. Come and listen there. And then they said again, it stinks. I said, well, invest in something, like a clothes peg. And so they would come, and I would recognize them because when they walked in, they did this to me. And I went like that too to greet them. Don't be so concerned about all the winds of doctrine that are hitting our church. Whether it's the anti-Trinitarian doctrine, whether it's the feast-keeping, whether it's the lunar Sabbath, the list is endless.
So friends, Professor Walter Veith believes that there is apostasy in the SDA church today, and that is the reason why there is going to be shaking in the SDA church. Those that are not true Seventh-day Adventists that have entered the church are going to be shaken out. Those that are not holding fast onto the biblical teachings, the pure biblical teachings, are going to be shaken out from the church. And we want to answer this question. What apostasy do we see in the SDA church today? But before we go on to address that, I want to ask you, do you believe there is apostasy in the SDA church today? Let me know that in the comment section. But personally, what I see in the SDA church that is so concerning to me is the LGBT issues in the SDA church. There are some pastors who support LGBT affirmation in the SDA church. And this is apostasy because, friends, the Bible clearly shows that the practice of LGBT is abomination. It's abomination. We have read some Bible verses previously in my previous videos about what the Bible says concerning LGBT. And we have seen that the Bible is against LGBT. We also see the kind of music in the SDA church that is noisier than it used to be. Friends, it looks like some of our leaders are allowing this blend of Pentecostal and evangelical music in the SDA church. But you know, in some time past, we were not seeing those music in the SDA church. And sometimes you would find that the people that we invite to sing in our churches speak in tongues, speak gibberish, all right on our pulpits, and it is so concerning. So there are others that I want to also share. We have pastors that are attacking Ellen G. White and the spirit of prophecy. Some don't even quote Ellen White from the pulpit. And also, friends, another area of concern is the fact that there are some pastors that are using different methods of Bible interpretation in our church, in God's church. All right. You know, as Seventh-day Adventists, we use the historical grammatical method of Bible interpretation. But there are some pastors, especially those pastors that were trained in Catholic institutions, that were trained in evangelical institutions. They use different methods of Bible interpretation that actually do not fit the SDA church. And there are a whole lot of things that are happening in the SDA church. But friends, God is not going to allow this forever. That is why there is going to be shaking in the church. God is going to shake those that are not following the word, the pure word of God out from his church. I want to pause here and invite your comments. Let me know what you think about the apostasy we see in some of our churches. You know, some of our churches are doing well. They are following the Bible. They are following God's instructions. But some few of them are actually in apostasy. And we need to pray for those churches. We need to pray for God's children in those churches. Friends, let me know your thoughts in the comments. My name is Lawrence. See you next time. God bless.